Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bike. Today's episode is pivotal as the person I sit down with was one of my very first employees at Zenergy, Meg Stallard. Meg was instrumental in everything that went into making Zenergy what it is, and I couldn't be more grateful for her. So let's clip in. Let's listen to her story, her evolution, and how she changed over the 10 years with Zenergy and where she is today. Welcome to another episode of Off the Bike. Friends, welcome to another podcast episode of Off the Bike. I have none other than my best friend, Meg Stallard, with me. Hi, Meg.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. It's a little cold in Morgantown today, so I'm
It
in
is
this
here
comfy sweatshirt, and I'm ready for the holidays.
I'm sitting beside my Christmas tree that everybody's got something to say about because I put it up early since we're going to be gone, and so I wanted to enjoy it.
Listen, I'm proud of myself. This year, I only have one tree. I've downsized from 4 to 1.
Okay.
So I'll
I've
take
got
it.
3 right now, but we'll have 5 at some point.
All right.
We'll see.
Listen, have fun.
But they don't
All
have
right.
ornaments. I'm just enjoying the light right now.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing
I
wrong.
agree. I agree.
All right, friends. So listen, Meg and I can talk for hours and hours and hours. So we're going to try to make this podcast have some sort of sense to it today. Meg, go ahead. Give it.
We want to make sure it's long enough that you can enjoy it on a long haul trip.
Yeah. Like hit play and listen to our shenanigans for however long we talk.
Get yourself wherever you need to go.
For however long.
That's right.
Listen, for those that don't know, I've considered Meg my best friend for 10 plus years now. And Meg was the first employee that we ever had at Zenergy in Charleston 10 plus years ago. What a time to be alive that was.
What a time to be alive, honestly. Actually, it was a great time to be alive. I 100% feel that in my soul. The time that was really questionable was during COVID. That was the time I was like, wow, what a time to be alive. What a world.
That was actually a time to be alive.
I mean,
think back to 10 years ago. We have so many other podcasts where we've talked about the original Zenergy, but to kind of, for anyone that doesn't know us, is just listening for the first time, do you remember your first ride at Zenergy?
I do, vividly.
Want to talk about it?
Yeah, I remember, again, I was hot on the trails of finding a spin studio. One of my friends in Charlotte told me that I needed to do it. She thought that it would be my jam. And so oddly, she kind of said that at the same time that this was being put in. And I was on a walk one day and was like, okay, I'm going to try this. We will skip beyond all of the messaging that I gave. But regardless, I walked in, I sat on, I believe, bike 12. I still remember that. It was the second row, second from the end. And I remember I was sitting next to, gosh, don't kill me if you're listening to this ever. Holy crap. Yesterday, I would have known this. Anyway, I know I was sitting beside. And I still remember looking at her like, what in the F have we gotten ourselves into? I never got out of my saddle. Like I was not coordinated enough to do that. I was looking at you like you were crazy. And back in the day, I feel like things were a tad easier than they are now. And so now I look back at that and think, wow, what must people think now? You know what I mean? But like, I remember thinking, what in the world? And I felt like I was in a lot of pain for a while after that. You know what I mean? Because I was in the saddle the whole time because I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, I walked out and thought to myself, I'm not really sure I'm going to do that again. You know what I mean? Like, and then I don't know how many days between my walking back in, not many, because as soon as I did that second time, I was like, I'm off and running. I remember the trajectory of like, I don't know what point I moved up front to challenge myself, whatever. And it's not to say that people that sit up front, that's what they're doing. But a lot of people will say that they, avoid the distractions, want to challenge themselves, and then staying up there makes them feel so seen that they feel like they can't stop. So I think I kind of went there pretty quick. I remember sitting on bike 4, which is the boyfriend bike, from then on. And I oddly taught myself how to do it right there.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally right there. That's what I did. And so I got to the point where I was riding, I think I was going through and I look back at it often thinking, holy crap, I'm so happy I'm still married because I think that was like a weird, healthy midlife crisis weirdness. And some people buy cars. I hopped on a bike and never got off. It was really
Never.
strange, ever. To the point where you at one point were like, you have to stop. You have to stop. Like I was riding 3 a day
I mean,
every
you
day.
might be the reason that we put in a rule saying no more than 3 rides a day.
Yeah, it was just obnoxious as hell, really. And so I look back at that and I'm like, what a psychopath I was. Honestly, I lost a ton of weight right up front at the first, I don't know, 5 months or something. Anyway, that was a wild time to be alive. It
And
is.
so one of the things that I always think is so funny is that you were my first employee.
Ish.
Ish. Yeah.
We're gonna go with it.
Ish.
I was
I
your
would
first I was your first employee, but I was not your first instructor.
That is true, but we're gonna say that you were my first instructor. Let's talk about. So wait, but let's talk about how you went from being a rider,
Yeah.
to then coming to the other side, because a lot of people, especially in today's time, just never. It was like one of those things where you had to be there
Yeah, you did.
to really understand the
Hmm.
energy is today. So
They
like,
are.
can you talk about
And we've
maybe?
talked about it before in different
Yeah,
realms, but I mean, the fast version is, I was obsessed with riding bikes. I just was. And I was getting to meet people and I was riding with friends and we were just having a big old time, most of you guys know because you probably heard it, but Nick was the only person that was teaching from August until November. Which just passed, which was weird because my thing popped
oh my
up and
God, it's November 18th.
told me it was my anniversary and it wasn't. And I was like, whatever. But
That's
anyway,
crazy.
and that's something we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just remember I felt bad for you because it just was like you were just going through a ringer and you were young. And so I have to say, like, I don't know if the connections were right for you to find other people really fast out of the gate. So you were just doing it. And so again, I was riding so much, I was generating a lot of towels anyway. So I just started helping. I think in that moment, my role was helper. And I just started helping you with laundry and taking it home. I lived right on top of it. So I was like, this is easy for me. I'll be here in the morning anyway. I'll just go home and do your laundry and come back. Now, keep in mind, I have children at home, young
Yep.
ones. And
Yep.
so I just start doing that. And I mean, I don't think I jumped right into like working at the front desk and checking people in. I think probably I did because I knew how to do it. But like, it wasn't something, it
I
was
think
just
it was.
more or less cleaning. It was
Yeah,
like
I think it
cleaning.
was more like, I was always at the studio.
Yeah.
We enjoyed being at the studio. So I think it was just being there and just like having conversations and folding towels.
And cleaning bikes and moving things and
And
moving
in
things
those days
around.
too, we would have a 9 a.m. class and we'd stay for an hour and talk with the people after the class.
Yeah. People would just hang.
Just hang.
That was the norm. The norm was lobby time.
Until
Classes
COVID,
almost
that was
were
the norm until COVID.
secondary. Yeah. Classes almost were secondary. I said my favorite time. And it's not to say that any of them weren't my favorite times, but Natalie Wine, if you're listening to this girl and Carla, and everybody, all these people, like you guys really epitomized what lobby time was for me. Like that year, whatever, they showed up early for class just to be able to hang out in the lobby and then would stay after. So sometimes you wouldn't even start cleaning the bikes because, the rule is to hang with the riders. And that's what we want to do. I mean, we don't want to clean your bikes, but we do want to hang out with you. And so I loved those years when people would just pause and wouldn't
And
rush out of there and would just hang out like we were buddies, like you were having dinner together.
yeah.
And then we would start cleaning after. And you're right, sometimes that wouldn't start until about an hour
Yeah. I
later,
mean, I really think, I know we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but I think that is what changed this business, sadly, was that then during COVID, you were told to do the opposite of everything
It
that we had
was.
ever done. I mean, we had built the business on connections and hugs and high fives and staying for an hour and sitting on the couch and sitting on the benches and the chairs and literally just laughing and having a good time. And then COVID comes around and it says no more.
Yeah.
You now have to be 6 feet away. Change the trajectory of the business. And, we'll talk
It
about it in
did.
a little bit, but that's something I'm so focused on getting back is that.
Yeah, it was one of my saddest. I think that was one of the saddest points for me because, even 15 minutes made such a difference. And the rules were to go straight to your bike. And like, it just was like, great, now we're just here to ride bikes. And I know that's a shitty thing to say, but like, Now we're just here to ride bikes. This is not a social hour anymore. And that, you know how sometimes you look back at COVID and some of the greatest things stayed around and some of the worst things went away, or vice versa. I just remember thinking the right things will stay or they'll come back. And they didn't.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't. Some groups will come early just because they have to get dressed or change clothes from work or stuff like that. But for the most part, people, I mean, and they know because, and you guys know if you were my rider and you bend down to stretch and you're undoing your shoes, I will say something. I will be like, where in the world is everybody going? Right now, we're in the middle of stretch. Anyway, and they just laugh, you know what I mean? Because I hear your Velcro. I hear that, laughing at them. But what it was like, that was like them getting ready to jump out of their shoes and run out of there, which is, it makes it hard. It makes it hard to reconnect with new riders, which we deeply want to do. We want to talk to you after class and you're out of there, And so, yeah, I so wish we could go back to pre-COVID where that was like people had more time or made more time, I guess is a big thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's an evolution. That's an evolution point for me. But
yeah, I think about it every day.
Same. Same.
I love Synergy. I love where we're at even today, but it's so, I'm in this like realm recently of really thinking about like the front desk, the physical front desk. And like,
right.
Like, do you remove that and just set couches and chairs up and have your front desk person like really socializing? And it's, these are all just like,
yeah, no,
points,
I know. And I mean, and every time Nick brings something like that up, I am the person sitting on his shoulder. Like, that's not who we are. It's just not. I mean, whether it goes that way or not, it's not who we built this place to be. We just didn't. And so that's, unfortunate that's what we have to think about, like eliminating something that is such a pivotal part of the experience just to make it more convenient for people to get in and out faster.
Yeah. It's like, how
Yuck.
do you, it's
Yuck.
how do you,
yeah.
how do you bring that vibe and that feel back from 10 years ago to now? But
which is
anyways,
what we've been fighting for that for a really long time.
Yeah. But before those days of COVID, we had many great years of non-COVID. What would you say you remember the most about year one of Synergy?
Aside from being obsessed with it, it was such a year of, well, there's so many things. I mean, obviously it was a year of growth. For Synergy, I saw it take many turns in 365 days, because once I walked in, everybody knows I didn't walk back out until I left in August. So I feel like I loved, and I've said it before, all the baby steps of it, and how big of a deal things were back then. Like today, if Nick gets a new washer and dryer, a couple of us will clap or whatever, but nobody else knows how big of a deal it was to get a washer and dryer the first time. We were taking laundry home. So like, I remember going to Lowe's and picking that stuff out. And I remember where we put it. We put it, in Charleston beside the bathroom in the hallway. I mean, it was the wildest
First thing you saw when you walked up the stairs.
First thing you saw was the washer and dryer. But you know what? We didn't care because we had one. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter. Like, that just made life easier. There was just like a lot of things like that. I mean, there was just so much value in watching us do everything kind of slowly.
And from scratch.
I mean, I can remember sitting in an office opposite of you because there were times when we literally were like literal brother and sister, and still are times, where it was just easier to not work in a room with you. And so I can remember just sitting in there and we didn't have access to anything. Like there was nothing. There wasn't Instagram. Like really, we were just getting into it. There wasn't any kind of research value. Like if you looked up spinning, you got something from like 1960, some goofball in on her little stationary bike with a fan. I mean, it was just weird. You couldn't find even anything. Like what we were doing was so almost along with some of the other boutique studios and, the universe, groundbreaking in a sense, over the last 10 to 15 years or so. So I can remember just researching what I could, trying to figure out how to run a business.
Couldn't find anything.
how to grow a business for because like how do we get this thing off the ground? Most of the gyms that were existent were huge facilities like the Ys of the world and Nautiluses of the world, but there weren't boutique really. Like at the time when this opened up, we were one of the very few boutique studios in Charleston, at least maybe not where everybody else is from because you guys are from a bigger place, but it was hard. Every little step was hard. I remember our first like advertisement. I remember our first window. Like, I mean, dumb stuff. Like, I remember our first water jug. That was a jug, we didn't have walkers. We had cubbies. All that stuff was in the room with us. The bikes, there was only 15 deep. I remember getting the new bikes. I remember Jenny coming with you to drop those off. I remember, I mean, like, there's not a part of it, it's safe to say, that I do not remember being a part of, which was huge. And again, getting that front row seat to see how this all went down and how it's grown. And I've been very appreciative through the years that you've let me have a hand in that and some of the decisions because, sometimes you need a female and sometimes you need, yeah, you just did. I mean, that was
100%.
a different take. And sometimes I was devil's advocate for sure. And I still am,
Yeah. I mean, there's without a doubt, I say this, I think probably every time we speak, there is no way I could have done this without you.
Well,
I told you that
you
in
would've.
August. But talking about growth, you had a lot of growth too, because you
I did.
go from writer to leader to mentor. I mean, you did every job and role under the sun.
There's nothing, and I pride myself on that only because I've loved like mentoring people that do it behind me. And I love saying, like, listen, I will never, ever ask you to do something that I wouldn't do with you or have done. Like, we're going to try this. Trust me. There's a lot of trust in that because there wasn't a piece of it that I haven't done. There just isn't. Whether it's training or working front desk or training an instructor or being an instructor or promotions or traveling and writing at other studios. There's nothing I haven't done.
I think that's what makes you and I so similar is that we were never and still are never afraid to get our hands dirty.
I will clean that toilet right along with you, except for some things, Charleston.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Some things. What? I want to start on the instructor front because that is really where you started. So you came into being an instructor in a very interesting way. Feel free to talk about it. But before you do, I want to know what about being an instructor changed you or made you who you are today.
Right.
Which is different than 10 years ago.
I think it's important to note, like, I went to college. I got a master's degree. I am a teacher trained, I had managed a pool. I had done things like that. Like I came into this with some background on people and how to make connections. And that was a good thing. And just being an extrovert, period, that helps. But I did start instructing, but I started instructing after I taught in the world. I did that. I subbed. Then I stopped doing that because I had children and I wanted to be very present in their lives. And so I spent like 10, 11 years home, doing that, which was like my perfect life if I could choose one. I never went out seeking something else. I never needed it. I've always loved being home with the kids and, whatever. And so I think it's important to note, like, I didn't do that because I was bored. I didn't come do this because I was bored. I did it because it fell in my lap. Again, I was sitting in Nick's office. I can draw it for you. I was sitting in the right chair. They kind of sat like an L. I was sitting here folding towels. And Nick's desk was, to my right. And he said, you're going to need to get up there. I need a break. When obviously he needed a break because he was the only one doing it. He was teaching every class every day since the day he opened, except for maybe 2 I know of. Or maybe 1. I don't even know if that was the first ride or the second ride. She'll never see this. I remember thinking, that's not what I think I said that to you. That's not what I'm here for. Like, I'm not here to be an instructor. I'm not seeking that. Like, just because I can do it doesn't mean I want to do that. You know what I mean? And you said, you kind of got serious and you said, I really need you to. I need a break. At which
it was because it was.
And I remember you went to Glade Springs. I still remember where you went. Like,
Meg, it just popped up on my memories and I sent it to Aaron 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It was such a different time because, I was teaching like 26 times a week.
Which, by the way, is impossible.
Impossible.
It's impossible. I'm just so you know.
But you could not close the business because people were like
We were just
pounding
gaining
on the doors
Yeah,
to
we
get
were
into the space.
gaining speed. Our classes were full for the most part by then. It took a while to grow it, but word of mouth is a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
And I've always, said, one person is 7 people technically.
Yeah.
That little invisible string will reach about that
Yeah.
many people if we really show them how great this is. And so I said yes, which is the dumbest, smartest thing I've ever done. At the moment, I was like, what in the actual world have I just said yes to? And as you guys know, like, I wasn't trained at all other than on how to ride. I'd never put on the mic. I'd never done any of that. I literally, Nick gave me a playlist and said, go. And I just did what he did. And that's what I did. And I remember how nervous I was looking out the window. I was on the phone with you, cussing you out because your brother and dad were walking in as if there wasn't enough pressure already. I was like, are you actually kidding me? Are you kidding me? I don't think your brother came back many times after that, but your dad obviously went on to be an instructor as well. And so, it stuck oddly. I mean, I think I rode. Well, I know I rode from November 16th to February 1st or whatever when I really, really unraveled this thing on maybe your playlists. I'm pretty sure. I think I just used your playlist. When I look back at Spotify, I have them numbered like Nick's first, whatever. I have them numbered for how many I personally used of yours. And then you see me flip the switch when I finally become an instructor or a real instructor or whatever you want to call it. I was kind of a sub at the time.
You went through our 4 or 5 page training in January.
I did, but I went through it with some of the coolest people in the whole entire world. I'll never
First group
forget
we ever had.
that time. I remember us being so serious. It was the last time I remember there being a big old snow, and we were up to like our hips in snow. And Les, who was just a rider, he just drove around, picked us all up, and got us there. And then he came back and got us and took us all home. We were so diehard about being there. Katie and Kim, shout out to you. Brett, shout out to you. I mean, there's just so many fun moments. That was just a fun. Jess, shout out to Jess.
Yeah.
It really was a cool time, but I learned how to really do it. What that looked like, I don't know. I still got people that were in that first ride of mine in November who were like, you didn't say a damn word. And I was like, oh yeah, it's probably because I was so nervous about saying this Energy Lord's Prayer that I just didn't say anything. And we've talked about that before, you guys. We used to say this really long thing while we were climbing.
What were we doing?
I don't know what we were doing. It was the weirdest thing in the whole wide world.
It used to be plastered on the wall.
It was just so strange. It was not on the wall. No, it was not, because you had to memorize that. Ask anybody.
Well, it was on the wall in the lobby above that couch. But you had to remember, all I remember is at Xenergy, transformation happens within these walls to our minds, our bodies,
and our souls.
And our souls. This
is
like
the time. This is I don't know. I have it someplace.
This is our tribe.
Yes.
I remember that.
And then I remember, like, at one point, somebody thinking it was weird for us to call things tribes. So then we let go of that. And I still remember that conversation. There's a lot of things that we have been through, and you guys are all thinking like, oh my gosh, they just go on and on about the beginnings. And it's only because that root is so deep. It made our roots so deep.
I remember messaging you before you were working for us, before you had taught, and I said, Meg, we've got a major issue. I'm being sued by SoulCycle.
Oh.
And I said, we have to change our colors and we've got to change our name.
I can tell you where I was. I was in Kentucky.
Yes.
I believe it was around Thanksgiving. I mean, I would have been there for that.
I was in Target.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, you know what, this isn't as hard as he thinks, because to me, Spinergy, which is what it was, gave you Zen. Like at the same time it gave you energy, it made you feel calm. It kind of had this yoga side to it mentally, and then this physical side to it. And so to me, to keep the same sound, Zenergy sounded best. And I remember you thinking, I'm never going to be able to say it.
And
never gonna be able to
for
say
a
it.
second, I really wasn't able to say it.
Yeah, but it stuck, and I was so happy because I kind of like that nobody knows what it is when they see the name, And then I kind of also like that people understand why it was chosen.
Yeah.
And I remember holding a paint chip, like I had a paint, like a fan when you're picking paint colors. Remember, we just took it in and held it up to the gray and we just started picking shades. We knew we didn't want to go red because that makes you kind of icky inside, and blue makes you kind of tired. So we were like, we don't know if we want blue. And then we kept thinking, like, it would be so nice to have something sensory, something that you can taste, something that you can feel, something that you can, all the things. Touch, and green kind of stuck in that. And I loved that because it was just something that we could contact all the senses. And at some points we had candles that smelled green, that smelled like lime or whatever, like scented fruit. And so anyway, I loved that growth. Again, all the little pieces, all the little baby steps. Like maybe we were forced into it in whatever way we were forced into that, but it made the most sense for us, at
Yeah.
the time.
You know, there's so many stories that I think you and I could tell over the 10 years. Oh my goodness, the
Well, I've
stories
got
we
some of
could
the
write.
best. I've got
We
some of the
could.
best for the best people. I mean, I just loved every second.
Well, so like, do you have, I know it's impossible to choose one, but do you have a class or a moment that like really sticks out to you over 10 years?
Gosh, we were talking about ground zero COVID the other day and how funny my 5 year was. We were in Pittsburgh for that weekend prior to my 5 year. And that was the weekend that we went into masks, which was a really strange. I remember that like it was yesterday. Devin taught the class, I believe, on that morning. We all went. A couple of us kind of went. It wasn't me, sniffy noses and stuff like that. Anyway, we thought they were allergies.
Staying in my
We stayed
house,
in Nick's
in
house
my
with about
apartment.
20 of his closest Pittsburgh friends. Anyway, so we brought the sickness to them and then we brought it home. So we went to my 5 year in masks, and that was an odd time, again, to be alive. And we were all looking at each other kind of with fear, but also with celebration. Like 5 years was a big deal, and the room was packed. And everybody was very uncomfortable because we literally couldn't breathe. And I think some people took their masks off, then they ended up getting it. My gosh, the next day we were all sick. But that one stands out like big time. My 500th ride stands out because you had already gone to Morgantown. My 500th ride, as you guys know, and maybe you don't know, we count them separately between instructor and rider. And so if you don't count your instructor rides, that kind of sucks for you. If you trained under me ever, I've always told you to keep track of it. I keep track of it in my phone. Like I knew exactly how many I taught a month from the day I started until the day I left. And so anyway, I remember you kind of being reluctant, but then you did it. You came home and you taught my 500th ride. And Amanda was there and Katie Lester was there. And I mean, that was just really fun. I still remember those two rides, but like also there's just standouts. Everybody that's hit the 1,000 mark and being there to celebrate those people, and what a, commitment that has been, and what those riders, what place they hold in my life, in my daily life. They became family to me, and knowing the people that hit the 1,000 rides everywhere else and how much work that took. I think I took pride in knowing riders from other studios. I thought that was fun for the small glimpses that I taught in Morgantown briefly for subbing and, things like that. I still remember that ride stands out. Like I was teaching one, and of course it was probably one of the times that Nick and I weren't getting along, but I remember you like, you're supposed to be in Morgantown like in 10 minutes and I am in an ice storm trying to get there. I mean, remember we had to like run it late, but we still ran it. I remember that. I remember, oh gosh, there's just so many guys. I could literally write a book. I
You
could.
should. You should.
I should.
In all your free time.
Yeah, all that free time that I never had. I mean, I just made time, which is
Well,
what
I
most people
think
do.
so. I mean, obviously, people, if you haven't met Meg and are just listening in, I think you can pick up by now that Meg was so instrumental and literally at the studio all the time. So then I'm going to fast forward because, again, I told you we could talk about this for days, but I'm going to fast forward to August of this year, which was our 10-year anniversary. And prior to this, you and I had a lot of conversations over the past year, maybe, if not maybe a little bit longer. What was going through your mind over that last year?
I think there's a lot to it. I can remember there being years when I thought, I'm never going to be able to leave. How do I walk away from this? How do I walk away from these people? How do I walk away from this life? It's like I didn't see the busy, but I felt the busy, if that makes sense. And I kept telling myself, I won't leave until I know what that's going to feel like when it's over, when I wake up the day after. Um, and then oddly, I think I remember thinking, and I don't think I thought it at the time, but over the last year, I'm old, you guys. Like I'm 49 years old. I celebrated my very first birthday on a bike at age 40. I walked in there when I was 39 and then the following year turned 40, and I was instructing and whatever. What a big fun birthday that was there. That was really kind of cool. I've got pictures from that. Anyway, so fun. Anyway, regardless, I think I remember thinking this year, especially, what a full circle moment this has all been for me. I didn't know how to ride a bike when I got there. Nobody does, and I just stayed at it. I was just adamant about knowing how to do it. I wanted to be able to kind of really cruise with the music. I wanted to be that person. So I taught myself how to do it. And then I was able to do unbelievable things. I could ride that bike all day long if you needed me to. Bring it. I remember being in there with Josh Holzman when he came to Charleston once, and he was a challenge effect in me always. If he's listening, hi Josh. He always challenged me. He just did. And I remember specifically, I don't remember the song. I remember him thinking, oh, but he always said, if you can't ride to Simply the Best or whatever, Tina Turner, every beat, you cannot ride my podium. He used to say that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we were writing that song or something else. I just remember it taking forever. And I wanted to die. And it was just him and I, face to face. I was on Boyfriend. He was on, and he was doing it with me. I mean, because he doesn't stop either. But I literally wanted to die. And I kept thinking in that moment, though, if I can hold this for this long, I can do anything. So there was a real long stint where I could ride any beat, I could ride anything. And just this last year, things started to kind of unravel. It started to hurt worse. My feet hurt, my legs hurt, my hips hurt. Everything just started to hurt. I kind of got these wits about me where I could just give up sometimes. And if you rode my classes, I just didn't ride full things, whatever. To me, that wasn't okay anymore.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to, I train people to say, and I say to them, like, if you can't ride it, don't put it in your list. And here I was doing that. And so I just remember, and I probably could, if somebody wanted me to, I could ride it, but I didn't want to ride it.
Yeah.
So I just got to this point where everything unraveled. And that's when I knew, like, it's time to go. It's time to go.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I can do this from the floor all day long, and I can. I can do it from the office if I needed to. I could do it from here. I just wanted to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
And my body was like, we're done. You're done, you
Yeah.
know? And so that's how I knew, like, I'm going to have to be okay with this.
What's one thing, like, from the emotional side that people
Mhm.
probably don't realize about making a decision like that, or making a decision that you made to step away?
I think it's such a big deal. And I hope everybody that listens to this that knows me knows that that was not I decided in August to leave and left in August decision. That decision was something, and here's in honest truth. I also felt like in the position I was in and how long I'd been there, I had to wait my turn. People before me had to leave first. Ariana, I love you. And she was going through some stuff. Plus she had a baby, but she was also going through cancer treatments, and like that shit was real. And that was really worse than my problems. My body could keep going. Hers needed to rest. She needed to leave before I did. Amanda, she needed to travel. Her work was a new job. And, I think it's important to note that all of these instructors work full-time jobs outside of here. It was just a big deal. And so, and I didn't. I am a mom, and that is full-time. That's actually more than full-time, but you know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a job that I needed to do other things for. And so Amanda needed to go before me too. And Sarah Brooks, she had to have a baby. And so she needed to go. And so with each leave, somebody else came in. And then I felt like I needed to stay because I wanted to see their progression. I wanted to have my hand on their back. I needed to wait my turn. And so whether it was on my mind for 2 years or 1.5 years that I probably was coming to the end of my rope, it wasn't an instant thing. I had to really go through some really emotional stuff for myself. What is it going to look like when my world shrinks? And what is it going to look like when my world goes quiet and when I don't wake up and go to the studio? Like, there's a lot of stuff I had to come face to face with. And I did that pre-August. I did that like in the spring.
I mean, is it fair it's almost like a grieving process
It
in a way.
was, and it was. And, I was tired. I was legit tired. I mean, I wanted to be a full-time 100%, 110% in family person, and I didn't miss anything. I still remember one time you wanted me to teach a class that I wanted to go on vacation. and you said, I need you to teach this class. And I was like, that's my
Yeah.
job, you know? And
Yeah.
I watched my family pull away and I sobbed. I still remember that. And I later got in the car and drove to them. So I just want everybody to know, like, I never let that job, this job take away from my main job, was being a mom. And so I really did have to just say to myself, I've got a year left with Gretchen here, not even that now. And I wanted to be 100% present for Sarah and the health issues she's gone through with her thyroid. And there was just a lot happening in my life that everything was guiding me towards its time.
Yeah.
But that shit is hard, you guys. Like, if you give something your 110% for 10 years straight and come in contact with the most amazing people in the whole wide world, and then they're not going to be in your everyday, it is a moment like I don't wish it upon anybody, you know? I worry about you someday having to walk away from it. And Aaron and people that have been around for as long as I did. Jess did the same thing. She left this year too. And that was hard. I mean, it's hard for everybody to not have their regular thing. I haven't
Yeah.
moved that way since then. And as most of you guys know, I've recently broke my foot, so I would have probably been forced out anyway. But like, such a weird thing. Getting old is weird. But
I mean, what do you think? And maybe this is for me to think about when the day does come, because
Mhm.
it will inevitably.
It will.
What is the lesson learned from stepping away? Because I dread thinking about that. It's terrifying,
Yeah.
honestly. It's very terrifying. But what's the lesson learned that for me and for anybody else, and then also for
Yeah.
anybody that may be thinking about making a change in their life like that?
Right. Right. So I think there's a couple things that come to my mind that have come up along the way, and burnout is real. And I know I told you several times, I wasn't losing the luster for it, but I was burnt out. I was. And there was no way. I think burnout happens when there's no way to escape burnout, and there just wasn't. I couldn't really drop my class load. I couldn't really say no to certain things. I didn't want to say no to certain things. I didn't want to cut classes, and I didn't want to cut class times just because little old me needs to go and take a break. That was not in my vocabulary. So I just kept pushing. And that was my personal, it wasn't like Nick was making me do that, but that was just my personal, like, that's how I attack life. And it wasn't because I didn't want to let other people down. I just didn't think it was fair to. If they can do it, then I can do it. And a lot of the times I would get up in front of them completely exhausted and look at them and think, if they can do it, I can do it. And I said that a million times. And so I think anything that you're locked in and don't feel like you can pivot or wiggle around in is something that you need to figure out. Like, if you can't wiggle, you got to figure out a way to wiggle so that you don't get burnt out. And so I tell this crew all the time that I, kind of mentor now. I love, 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 love a lot of the things that I'm able to dabble in right now with the company. And I love talking to the instructors about their everything. You know what I mean? You know this. And so I just tell them a lot of the time, don't burn out. If you're burning out, if you feel any burn, if you feel any stress whatsoever, figure it out now. Do not keep doing it just because you have to. Speak up. And so that to me is one of the biggest. I think the world did get quieter, but it didn't get less busy. Like, a lot of people were so worried about me. If one person asked me what in the world I was going to do with myself now, I was like, I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before, which was a lot that you weren't seeing in the mom section. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still as busy as I was before. The only difference is I don't have to stop for 3 hours out of the day to go up there.
Yeah.
And I don't have to stop for 5 hours out of the day to do my playlist and then go up there. And so that was really it for me. It's like I released something rather than took on more. Everybody else is like, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? Well, right now I'm going to do whatever the F I want. But, and I'm having a blast doing it. Like the other day, you guys, this is so hilarious. Like, Gretchen came home and I would like cleaned out 3 drawers in the room or whatever. And I found her like loom, like her knitting loom. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to do this. And I did. I mean, but I am 49 years old. I'm like, people laugh about it, but you know what I mean? I broke my foot. So it's not like I could do anything. So I was like, well, I'm going to learn how to knit. Todd the other day was like, I mean, she looks like she's making me up like a tube or whatever. Anyway, you guys, but you just do dumb things with your time. And I just remember, I just try to make it all very purposeful,
Yeah. Yeah. Even though you stepped away in August from the leadership and from the teaching, you're still involved with Synergy, obviously. That's why you're on this podcast. Um, and I think I even put this in a message that I wrote to you. You will forever be a part of Synergy. But like, how are you a part of it in today's world? It's so
Well,
different than before, but how are you
right.
still a part of it?
So along the way, as you guys know, I managed Charleston for, 10 years. And in that got to have so many fun conversations and training sessions and like get to know you sessions. And, I'm on weekly calls with the leadership team and, we're hashing out ideas and sometimes saying things out loud makes things better. And so that for me has been what's going on now. You gave me a break and I still am on a break, but I guess it's kind of an honor to be asked to consult. And so I think that's kind of the role I'm taking on right now more than anything is like, if I'm kind of that sound mind and you guys know it. If I see something, I'm going to say something. So last week I called Nick and was like, we got to talk. I was like looking at the app because I don't have it. That was the other way how my world I'm like, when you watch like the ticker, I was that girl. Like I wanted to access, I wanted to look at numbers. I was a numbers girl. Like I wanted to see things. I wanted to do that. And I mean, when that part of my world, I was almost as worried about that part going quiet than anything. That really was like, what am I going to do now when I turn on my computer? That to me was like a real, like, holy crap, I really am done. My email's gone. I don't have access to anything, and that's fine. I think deep down, I probably appreciate that I don't have access to that because I would be looking at it, So the other day I'm looking at it on the app and I'm like, oh, we can do better,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, things like that where I was like, let me call Nick. I'm just going to, and I know you and sometimes Nick sees things and sometimes he doesn't see things. And sometimes if I see things before he sees things, he doesn't like it. And so I just was like, I'm just going to need you to listen. I'm just going
Yeah.
to say it and then I let it marinate with Nick. And then if he wants to do something about it, he does. And if he doesn't, he doesn't, you know?
I actually had a question. I'm going to ask this now because I wrote this down. I said, what's something you want people to know about working with me? The good, the challenging, and the funny.
So, I mean, I can tell you what Nick is going to say before he says it. I'm going to tell you what his answer is going to be before you ask it. I know him too well, probably in that sense. I know his business mind. I know the things that he sees versus what he doesn't see, and it's not like I've always been his eyes, but I have probably a different connection point with people than he does. And so sometimes I have to look at things as an like super empathetically. I have to look at it as if I am that person rather than big picture. Sometimes he wants me to see big picture and I'm like, I don't really want to see big picture, And so, but most of the time, like people will be like, what do you think Nick will say if I do this? And I'm like, I wouldn't even ask because I know exactly what he's going to say. You know what I mean? Or certain scenarios where I'm like, I would not run that by Nick because he might call that person and fire him. You know what I mean? I'm just like, this is probably how you should handle it. And we'll just see how it goes. There's things like that. Like I know where
People are going to be terrified to meet me.
No, I know where your like your threshold is for funny business. And in all of that. And because of that, I think it kept me very honest for 10 years. I think for the 10 years I was there, if you trained it, that's how we did it. I mean, I didn't bring in any sneaky business. I didn't do any extra choreo. I always said that not only was Charleston the roots, we've stayed the roots. And so I'm always like, if you need to like reconnect with anything, maybe emotional, Charleston is always on that, I think,
Always.
that's how I train. That's how you let me train them, whether they are front desk or not. We are and always have really spawned and moved ourselves on being people's people. If you're not a people's people, I've learned along the way how to interview differently
Yeah. Yeah.
and how to find the people that like bring the sunshiny spots to the staff. And so I think we've obviously picked that for all 4 studios. I mean, the staff could not be any more amazing and in touch. And I love watching them. I said, I hope anybody that listens, our roots run deep. And if I've met you, whether it's through a training call and I'm watching your progression or, like Logan, like sometimes she'll post and I'll just cry. And she knows that. Like I'm watching everybody. I'm watching Alex, I'm watching Tracy, I'm watching Aaron, and it's everybody. Like Instagram at least keeps me in touch with what everybody's doing. I was still like the other day, Paige Morris wrote something like I just delivered like maybe the playlist of my dreams or something. My ass took a screenshot, was like, what is the
Yeah.
playlist of her dreams? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I love that. Like, or if Harley posts his schedule and it's like 20 deep, I'm like, what in the living shit are you doing? Because he's doing both things, and burnout is real.
Yeah.
And so I was worried about people. I just think, yeah, I have that side of things taking
Yeah.
on
I mean,
lockdown.
the moral of the story is that while you may not be on the bike,
I'm watching.
especially not now because you have a broken foot, but
Yeah.
while you may not be in the studio, like you still are very much involved in Synergy.
Yeah, I mean, there's just little things. The team still asks me for questions. We're training on Ignite right now. If you haven't ridden one, you should, you guys. It's one of the best, my favorite
Yeah. So good.
to teach.
So good.
Things like that I am so grateful that I've had a hand in, because golly, how cool to like see something that you've had a hand in come to life. But Nick allows me to do that. So working with him, while we are like a brother and sister, I still can think like him in ways that he thinks. He's a little bit more businessy than me. I think more probably for the people, and you think more about the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's always been a good combo. And then Aaron can like learn anything. Like he can learn anything. Like, remember how good he is at like learning things, and he can teach
Yeah.
you how to write. It's amazing, really. So that's always been kind of a good skill set and a good team. But like we've got a great team now. So like with everybody, with everybody. So
What an amazing like chapter. I'm so grateful for it.
oh, me too. I said earlier, you were talking about like how did it change me? And I think it's all of it, really. All of it changed me. Not, I think what it allowed me to do is revisit me, which I talk often about in class, where we wear all these stupid hats outside of there. Like, I'm gonna be the PTO president, and I'm a I'm a whatever, a volunteer, and then I'm gonna go do this. And I was just a yes, we're all yes people, like, whatever. And if you've been in my class, I will say, my gosh, it is so empowering to say no to things that people expect you to say yes to,
Yes.
and yes to things that people expect you to say no to. And I just think in general, you get to take off those hats when you ride. And I never want to ask more of you, but I want to ask you to get to know you, because usually there's something hidden in there that maybe you were as a 10-year-old child or whatever. And so I just remember thinking this whole job allowed me to revisit myself, and then it taught me strengths I didn't know I had. It kind of gave me time I didn't know I had. There's a lot of that, like I hate to say it did make me probably braver, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. This was a wheelhouse that I didn't know what I was doing. I come from a background of competitive swimming and soccer, and then dabbling in other weird sports. Not weird. Softball's not weird, but me playing softball is weird. Like
Yeah.
things like that where I'm like, what in the world? I tried everything, But like, yeah, stationary bike and being able to generate energy from that is a wheelhouse I wasn't ready for. And so it taught me bravery. It taught me strength. It taught me that I had strength. It taught me that I could get through things with this, and not necessarily always this, or not always this. It was a lot of mind work for me, which, I'm ADHD. I have 100 things going through my mind at a time, but it was like 45 minutes a day that only one thing went through my mind, and it was getting from the start of that ride to the end. And what people in that room were feeling. What were they going through? So and so just got divorced, or so and so just found out that so and so. It's like one mind was thinking for the 12 to 20 people in the room at a time. And so, yeah, it changed me in ways that I could juggle a lot more of that. Gosh, I don't know. I was physically stronger than I've ever been, probably.
Yeah.
But a lot of it allowed me to revisit this person that I always was, which was this kind of athlete, and people person. It allowed me to be that. Like, I didn't have to be stuck in a box someplace, whatever. Teaching didn't really work out. Not
I
because I
mean,
didn't like it, but because those kids, you couldn't talk to them like you can talk to adults,
what a I mean, the theme of this podcast episode is evolution. And
Mhm.
so what a like journey and an evolution of 10 years, which is just still so crazy to think about.
It's so
What
crazy to think
what
about.
a what a evolution from then to now and this next chapter of where you are and where you continue to go. And it's like, it's exciting. I mean,
It's
obviously it's
exciting.
sad, but it's exciting.
It is exciting. If you had asked me 10 years ago that I would have been on a bike 10 years later, still, I would have said that you were absolutely crazy. 5 years later, I would have said you're crazy. Maybe 2 years later. I mean, there's a lot of things I was like, you're crazy. But for some reason, that wheel just kept spinning and I just kept getting on. Like I just kept doing it. I think the people kept me alive. I think meeting new people along the way, holding on to what was, holding on to what could be, working from COVID through COVID. And it's not to say, and I think I have to clear up because we talk about the glory years, our humble beginnings, whatever. It's not to say that right now is not great.
Correct. Correct.
Right
Correct.
now is great. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be
It's
doing.
just different.
It's just different. It's just different. It's in a world where information overload is coming at us in all directions. And yes, we ask you to put your shit down for 45 minutes and be present. And you give us that. And we're so thankful. But like time is not on our side anymore. Everybody wants to rush to the next thing. Maybe they're running to dinner and they made time to ride, or maybe they're running to work because they made time to ride. It's never lost on me or anybody else that you chose you for 45 minutes, and that's all we need. And we don't need you for a half an hour before class and a half an hour after, but we do invite you to do that if that's something that you would like to do. I think that's important to note because some neat people have walked in that studio. I freaking Emily Lipsitz, I freaking like became a wedding officiant because of this job. Like what in the world? Two times. I mean, that I would have also never added to my list of things I was ever going to do. I mean, and people have had a great time with that. I've had a great time with that, but I wouldn't have changed that. Like it was just the most perfect thing for me to do with what we do because we do technically preach, or at least I do, on a bike. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't know. The
It
evolution
all
has
pieces
been.
together.
It does oddly. And now, I mean, what am I doing with my time? I think about that a lot. I think, like, do I miss the days of being able to get up there and do that? Yeah, I do. Obviously, recently I had a chance to get back up there and I broke my foot 3 days before. So cheers, for just one class, but it still was a class. It's just fun. It's just fun to think about those days and there's going to be a time. I mean, right now, if I could go back in there, I could probably still do it, but there's going to be a time when I can't. And so I think there's like a real reality to the evolvement in this job. It's not meant to be in your life forever. It's not. So physically challenging for those people that do it. Cheers. It's physically challenging. And so, but I just love it. Like Jacob, I, saw him getting back on the bike, this week. And I sent him a little thing and he sent a little thing like, that's the text I was waiting for. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I'm watching you. But
Yeah.
regardless, like he can still do it. He should do it, like, and then there's people that got away from us. And it's not because it was just the time and the place. Like if you got away early from us and and you've moved on with your life, Aaron and Bree, I have heard your riding. I have heard their riding, but like they were pivotal in
Yeah.
Morgantown. Pivotal. Pivotal, 2 human pivotal moments in Morgantown just were. And then same in Pittsburgh, people get away. But Josh and Devin, pivotal people, and making that place tick. Everybody that's had a hand in it has helped make it work. And we couldn't be more thankful. I can speak for both of us.
Yeah. 100%.
I just love it. I love watching. I think my involvement is everybody else's involvement, if that makes sense. So watching people succeed in it, watching people leave it and what their lives take on now. Like look at Amanda. She lives in freaking Switzerland, is having a baby and is married. The moments just keep moving right where they're supposed to. And so while everybody that has been on those bikes is missed, there's like little ghosts of the people in the room. You know what I mean? Anna was in town this past weekend with her new baby, Avery, and we talked about those days and it did come up. Kristen was at the table, whatever, and it did come up like those days were great when Natalie and everything, they were great, but they were just great in a different way. They were great in a different way and they're still great. So we got Carly and everybody and Maddie and everybody.
Yeah.
They're just killing it. They're killing it.
That is the evolution. I mean,
it is the evolution. It's just watching it continue. I'm just so grateful that it's still going, again, 10 years to make it as a 10-year mark is a big deal. And I've always said, I think I freaking love being in a class where I've got somebody on my right flank that's written 2,500 times. And then I'm looking at a new rider. And it's not to say this could be you. Commitments are different these days. People have choices, more choices than they used to. But it's just to say, I think I want to see you more than one time. And I hope I see you more than one time. You know what I mean? This place has staying power. And it's because of the energy that the instructors pump and the front desk pumps when people walk in. There was just like, there's a real thing. That experience starts from the minute you hit that door. Ask Charleston how bitchy I am about the rugs and the stairs. I'm like, the experience starts outside of that door. So if it's dirty and they're walking into this dirty and they can talk about that when they leave here, I've got something to say about it, you know? And so I loved that people have let me like stick my anal points, the things that you would not think I would be anal about, and then let me stick my joyful points. That was always really fun, is to like attack joy. If you get up 3 times in a row in this job or as riders and you dread coming, then let's have a conversation. Because I'm not gonna make you stay here. You know, like if this place is making you feel stress, that's the last thing we want. We want you to be able to release stress. So if it's something that's like binding you to it in an unhealthy way, then we obviously need to talk.
Yeah,
Things like that. Like, I'm just so thankful that I've gotten to be all of that at some point in this 10-year journey. And right
chapter.
now, I literally get texts from the team all the time asking questions. Like, I'm happy to be that person as long as you're okay with me being that person, you know?
Always. Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that the days are so much different than they used to be,
Hmm.
but the moral of the story is Synergy will stay with you forever if you allow it to stay with you. Everybody, not just you, you
Right. And
know?
if you work at creating, what do I want Synergy to be in my life is a really fun question to ask people. What do you want Synergy to be in your life? Do you just want it to be a 45-minute ride, or are you using it to meet people, or are you using it to network, or what are you using this for? Are you using it as a mental break from your everyday job? What are you using this for? What
Yep.
is your why? Because we have to have a why if we're teaching. Why did you put that song in there? What were you expecting to get from that? Those kind of things. So I think if you let it in and you let us do what we have designed this place to do, it will change your life in ways that you wouldn't even know. It will allow you to trickle out and it will pull you back in faster than anything,
Well,
you know?
I was just gonna ask you what your final message is for people. Is that your final message that you would
I mean, sure. I mean, leave if you need to. Miss it because you're going to. I've got Sarah Brooks, she rode the other day, with Carly. Again, you do leave and you do want to come back in and pedal again. Sometimes just to let somebody else think for you. Yeah, allow yourself to miss it. The kids always ask the kids, I call them kids because everybody under me is a kid, technically, because I'm so old. But they always say, like, I will admit it to everybody out there in Zenergy land or wherever. I have not ridden since I left.
you also broke your foot, but
I have broke my foot a month ago. And I'm not, at this point, I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to ride again
yeah,
because of where it is. I remember thinking, um, my shoes broke. They exploded, and I had another pair, like a standby pair that I knew wasn't as good as the pair that I was wearing. And I can remember and I hated them and they hurt my feet all the time. And I still wore them because I was determined that I wasn't going to have to break in another pair. I was like, I'm not going to be here long enough to break in another pair. So, anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but that, I don't know when I'm going to walk back in. Let's say that. I know I'm invited to at all times in my life, thanks to Nick, and that parting gift, which was, you know, if I needed time on a bike, I could just walk in. But I haven't gotten on yet. And it's not to say that it's not going to be the most wonderful homecoming ever when I finally do. It has a lot to say with the fact that I let myself go beyond burnout. And that's my own thing. It's my own problem, And so it's not that I will never ride again.
go back to you allowed yourself to burn out.
I allowed myself to go beyond burnout. There's a
Yeah,
difference. There's a
yeah.
difference. And so I encourage anybody, as even luckily you do break free sometimes when you're feeling extra kind of uneasy about stuff. But,
You have to.
it's a very
I've
physically
learned.
demanding job. And so do not let yourself get to where I am, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
While I 100% miss it and I miss the people, I pedaled so much, you guys, that I couldn't pedal anymore. And
yeah,
it's like ran out of my body. And so don't get to that point. Just
yeah.
don't. Nobody, but just pace yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Everybody in life, pace yourself, because I feel like there's just information coming at us and things coming at us from every direction. And
Crazy.
it
This
is. So, I
world
mean, I
is
think that's been
crazy.
part of my, like, just to be able to have a slow morning has been nice. And, um, to drink a full cup of coffee without being on the run, and to not eat breakfast right away if I don't want to, only because I knew I had to because I had to ride. There's just been a lot of lessons in slowing down, sometimes too much. Sometimes I'm like, get the hell off the couch. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But, for a while there, I was walking all the time and lifting weights ish and doing this. And right now I've succumbed to Pilates on a mat in my basement and just moving it home because my foot is broken and I can't do much. So anyway,
Crazy.
Again, but I miss everybody. So there's that.
So how can people, if they don't follow you on Instagram, how can they follow you? Do you remember your Instagram name?
At Meg Stallard.
Okay, perfect. Easy.
Because I only have one account. So I just dabble in all of it. Yeah. So that all kind of quieted too. I mean, I don't even have good stories anymore. I'm so boring. I'm so boring. Like, I have to post pictures of my cat to stay alive, and like I'm really not doing anything super great right now.
Well, I guess life isn't that bad at that point.
No, it's not. It's not. And I'm grateful for every second of it because, again, I'm holding on tight to Gretchen, living vicariously through them and what fun lives they have and what a great group of friends they have. And, it's just fun to see your kids thrive. It just is, and of course, next year Gret's off to college and we're going to be empty nesters. And that's also
another chapter.
Yeah, another chapter begins. And so who knows what that'll bring? I think Todd and I are going to have a great time, probably visiting people in college, but that works, that works.
Well, listen,
life is
Zynergy will always be what it is because you were a part of it and are a part of it. And
that's nice to say. That's nice to say. And, the more conversations we have, I think the more little baby steps Zynergy will continue to take.
Always. Always.
I hope.
Always. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, everyone, for listening along in our crazy antics. And I know
you've heard this story a million times, but each one we reveal a little. It never gets old, and I'm at the stage now where I actually know less people at Zynergy than I've ever known before. Yeah. Cheers to anybody that's keeping it afloat and still riding. I love it.
Crazy. Well, perfect. Thank you.
Appreciate
you. Love you. And
love you too.
Listen on the next podcast.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Can't wait. Bye.